everyone, this is Sofia Smallstorm. I am doing another podcast today. It is the last day of February 28th, and my guest is Ingri Cassel. I've known Ingri for many years. She is an anti-vaccine, you could say crusader or expert, or maybe Ingri will supply a better description, but I guess I'll just bring her in. I always like people to give their own introductions and tell us a little bit about their background and why we're doing the show. So Ingri, welcome today to Sofia Smallstorm's podcast. Haha. Are you there?
Well, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I we have this impression out in the general world that anti-vaxxer is a negative term, and I know the founder of Vaccination Liberation that I'm the director of is actually my mother, Walene James, and she didn't believe that we should use anti-anything, which is why she called our association Vaccination Liberation, that we're liberating ourselves from a mindset. And really what we are is pro-health and natural immune function, and really teaching people about how our bodies work in health and disease, and the function of disease is really to bring our bodies back into balance.
That is a really good way to put it, Ingri, and one that people don't seem to understand. I don't even like to use the word immune system because we're not immune to anything. We have a defense system in our body, a series of defense, you could say, lineups. And it functions, they all function together like a security system. But this idea of immunity is not the right idea.
Well, actually, Walene, she was really a brilliant thinker. And, I mean, notice how the terms that we use, it's really hard to get away from these terms. It's a military model that we're defending ourselves from anything. You know, I'm not attacking you, believe me. I mean, it's just that we are using terms constantly based on this military model of the way we see the world. And they've taken people that have different backgrounds and different understandings of how the world works and had them look under a microscope of how these microbes and different, things interact. And based on their understanding of the nature of the universe, they interpreted the data totally differently. And so, how we see the world is really based on so many of our former belief systems. And actually, Bruce Lipton discussed that in The Biology of Belief, which is an excellent book that, pretty much shows us that the way we view the world is based on what we're taught early on in life, and life can be a process of unlearning these foundational beliefs. And many of us, we've talked about this in the past, Sophia, is we're constantly changing our belief system with new information. At least mature people do that,
Well, I'm not trying to use military terms when I say defense or security. I'm using the English language. It has nothing to do with the military. But the body does shed cells. That's part of what they call the immune system. When you cough and you cough up stuff, I don't want to be too graphic here, but you're actually replacing your linings, cell linings. It could be in the lungs. So this is all about securitizing the functioning of your lungs, bringing it back to health, and making you more resilient, So these are not military terms at all in my book. I'm simply using them the way I would use the English language, based on what I understand English to be. But anyway, tell us a little about your mother, Walene James. I know that she wrote a book that you published called The Vaccine Religion.
Right. Well, actually, she wrote 3 books. But her second book was Immunization, The Reality Behind the Myth, and that was first published in 1988 with the second edition in 1994. And what prompted that book was my sister. She was taken to court over her son not being vaccinated. And this was in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And there was a court case. They wanted to take custody of her son under the guise of child neglect because our family did not believe in vaccinations. And so that whole court case, although we prevailed, it was very, very difficult. We ended up hiring an attorney from Georgia, Tom Finn, and he argued successfully enough, and the information that Walene presented to the judge was enough for the judge just to want to satisfy the law on the religious exemption angle. But anyway, that whole the court case was so what do you say? I mean, it threw our whole family in a tailspin. The idea of the state being able to take custody of a perfectly healthy, well-nourished child at 3 years old because we didn't follow the vaccine religion was pretty shocking, I think, to the whole family. And my mother was a founding member of the National Health Federation, and the National Health Federation was out of Southern California. I think they're in Texas now, but it's the oldest health freedom organization in the country. And so they sent out, money to try to get, pay for the attorney and everything. But yeah, it was well publicized in the area at the time. Virginia Beach is near Norfolk, Virginia, big military base, and so the Virginian Pilot Ledger Star had a big story about it, and there was a lot of what we're seeing today. This the vaccine religion coming up to the fore, where people are thinking that we're horrible parents for not vaccinating, and
right.
And I went throughout school. Go ahead.
What year was that, Ingri?
That was in 1985, 84, I believe.
Okay, so this was your nephew.
No, actually 1981. I'm sorry. It was my nephew. It was well, wait a minute. I just got out of college. It was more like 1981, 82. I'd have to look back in the book, but I remember she took that information that she gave the judge, and that was the foundation for the book Immunization, the Reality Behind the Myth. And that particular book is what got her to start loosely an organization called Vaccination Liberation.
Okay.
And
the organization that you are heading up now, VacLib, as it's referred to in abbreviation, it's Vaccination Liberation, but your mom actually started it. Your mom, Walene. I want to spell your mother's name because it's a very interesting name. Walene, Walene James. And so that was she must have been a anti-vaccine activist already when her grandson became the subject of this litigation.
Well, we were not vaccinated as children. My sister, she's older than me, we're grandparents, and, she's never had a vaccine in her life. On the other hand, I've been vaccinated, and they were all forced on me and accidental. So I'm very passionate on the idea of, that we should, of course, be able to own our own bodies and decide what we will eat, what we won't eat, what we will drink, what we won't drink, and certainly what we will inject and not inject into our bodies. So that's, to me, the most fundamental of all human rights.
Yeah, well, I have been drawn into the subject of parens patriae, and it appears that the state was exercising that back in the 1980s, the early 80s. It has been quoted by the Supreme Court, a 1944 case, Prince versus Massachusetts, and brief that the authority to compel vaccination of children comes under the doctrine of parens patriae, in which the state asserts authority over child welfare. So this is something that is now really, I think, expanding and unfolding. But our show is going to be about explaining the nature of what vaccines are supposed to be protecting you from. I have been intrigued by this discussion over what is a virus. And I know now from interviewing Dr. Banks a few weeks ago and from having discussions with her on Skype and on the phone in the past that viruses have never been isolated. And I know from discussions with Jenny Lake, who also has studied this and explained a lot to me over the last couple of years, that there are endogenous viruses, materials, transitional materials that the body makes itself when under siege. And I'm not using military words here. I was almost going to say attack, but I didn't. Siege by microbes or a temporary lapse of, now I'm going to use the word immunity, only because we all use it. It's like a form of currency in our language, this term immunity. But we all have lapses, when we are overtired and we suddenly come down with something. I'm just going to cite this because I've never forgotten. One day I went for a very long run. I was fine before the run, and I ran 10 miles, and it was in November. And I remember I was running, having a blast. And then on the way home, I had about a mile to go. And this was San Diego, so our Novembers are not that freakishly cold. I had a mile to go, and boom, I caught a cold. I knew it right on the run. I suddenly said to myself, I've just now caught a cold. So that to me is something that, is kind of odd because I didn't contact any people. Sure, this might have been latent in me. If you want to talk about the viral origins of the cold, the common cold, which now I am going to contest, just to see what my hunt will yield if I do try to take that apart. But yeah, I caught a cold in the last mile of a 10-mile run. So my body came down with something. It said, you know what? You pushed me too far. I'm too tired. Now I'm going to be sick. So Ingrid, tell me what you know about viruses and the viral theory of disease. Start anywhere.
Yeah, I just have to say, it's part of our language, Sophia. You caught a cold. If something out here did it to you, it's not, it's part of our language. That we're disempowered, that we did not create it. So you got it from somewhere outside of yourself instead of something that happened as a process of your body needing to have an eliminative episode. So I'm sorry, I had to bring that up. But the whole virus thing came from Thomas Rivers. I don't know if you realize that. Thomas River was the director of virus research for the Rockefeller Institute. And it was his research that established that viruses were different from bacteria. And that led to the whole establishment of virology. And this was all during the polio epidemic. So he's the one who's considered the father of modern virology. And there's some pretty fascinating information on when you really dissect a lot of the polio history. And I have a Life magazine from 1954 where this reporter was clearly struggling, trying to make sense of all this information. They were scrambling to try to make a cohesive propaganda campaign, bringing in this whole concept of virus as separate from bacteria. Because as you and I both know, polio certainly wasn't caused by a virus. It was a mass poisoning through both, the processed food that was, being, there was the refrigeration. They were doing Coca-Cola. They were doing ice cream, pasteurized homogenized milk, and Cheerios. All of this processed food. So there was all these nutrient deficiencies coupled with the radiation, the DDT, and even at the height of the polio epidemic, it was 1 in 1,000. But the vaccine actually was a huge failure, and we have a lot of that history on our website at vaclib.org, vaclib.org. But you can go to vaccinetruth.com, and that's our networking site, and you can access it from there. too.
Ingri, I was going to ask you what part of the polio epidemic you're talking about, but I think you're talking about the 50s, when the Salk and Sabin vaccines were administered to hundreds of thousands of children. I saw a film clip from, it was all black and white, in a presentation being given by a vaccine expert, and I could not believe the sights that were being filmed. Children frolicking in a public swimming pool in the summer, and the city truck comes around with a hose and sprays them all, the entire pool with the children in it, with DDT.
Yep.
Because, the myth was, or the thought held at the time was that you contract polio from public swimming pools, which is why we are made to shower before going in public pools today. That's another, an added little cleanliness thing that's a relic from the past. But then the other thing I saw in these film clips, a mom making sandwiches for her kids, and she was sprinkling DDT out of a canister, the way you would sprinkle pepper or paprika or, a dill or something on your sandwich. So she was sprinkling DDT right into the sandwiches. And this was the beginning of the chemical age, the height of it, where housewives were fighting germs in every nook and cranny of their lives. But, we would never do anything like that today. Like spray a sandwich with Lysol. Who would do that? Yet I know plenty of people who use Lysol. So.
Right. We are absolutely fanatical about germs being the enemy. And, the whole world is teeming with microbes. And that's what these chemical companies in Monsanto, they want to sterilize everything. They want to actually kill all life. And the smallest portion of life is, these microbes. And I call them microbes rather than, germs. Viruses are dead. There's all this thing between, bacteria or viruses. And actually, I just prefer to use the term microbes. People call, some of these microbes pathogens. Well, their pathogens are just a type of microbe that is present in disease. It doesn't come first. They're not causal agents. They come after the disease is present. And Béchamp, I don't know if you've ever talked to people about Antoine Béchamp, but there is a big controversy between Antoine Béchamp and Pasteur. And actually, Antoine Béchamp was the brilliant microbiologist that Pasteur was a student of, and he took his ideas and perverted them. But he called the world of microbes, he called them microzemas. And he wanted to show that the disease has to be first, and then the microzemas start proliferating based on the particular environment that's in there. It takes different microzemas to ferment beer. It takes different microzemas to make, yogurt or clabbered milk. And so he actually, I have many of his early writings, and it's really fascinating, because he was well connected, Antoine Béchamp, and he wanted to get a newly amputated arm from someone who had contracted gangrene, and I say contracted because that's, it's part of our language. But anyway, the guy had gangrene, and he was getting it amputated, and as soon as that arm was amputated, they took it, this is, horse and buggy days, and they immediately sent it to Béchamp to be able to look at under microscope. This is before the electron microscope, but the microscope was adequate enough for him to see the details. And sure enough, there was no, it took a few minutes for the microzemas to develop and proliferate, once the tissue was actually dead and separated from the body. And, and anyway, he wrote about it.
That's when nature itself starts to turn the dead material into nutrition for something else. So
right. It's part of the decay process.
Yes, but there are actually resonant frequencies that all life, whether it's dead, dying, dead, or alive, puts out. I've learned that call to, for instance, the microbes and the fungi and other things to get over here because this is now your dinner and we can turn this whole thing into a new cycle of life, right? So, what is gangrene actually on the body? Is it a form of necrosis or decay? I could look it up.
Well, like diet, I'm just, just off the, you can go ahead and look it up, but, diabetics will often have that kind of thing set in, and it's, when there's a lack of oxygenation in the system and, circulation, you find it a lot with, diabetes actually, in the extremities. And, I find that people that, between the lack of oxygenation from not exercising right, not eating properly, too much of an acidifying diet, because when you have a more alkaline forming diet, with more raw fruits and vegetables, this doesn't happen. You exercise. But, if you're going to just, eat nothing, green, nothing, no vegetables, just higher up on the food chain and, have what Deborah Tavares calls the Illuminati diet. I love that term, the Illuminati diet, when she said that. It's just, anyway.
Gangrene gangrene is necrosis. It's dying tissue, cell death, and it's caused by reduced blood supply to the affected area. It may occur after injury, infection. So it's basically oxidative stress on a very severe level to a certain part of the body. And I'm looking at a picture, pretty awful, awful looking. So it's a part of your body actually dying. Well, anyway, to get back to our discussion, the meat of it, so to speak, we were discussing Deschamps versus Pasteur, as they say in French.
Yes.
So do you want to resume that? I guess, I didn't realize that one was a student of the other. Actually, I used to know that. I think I forgot it. But so what happened? We've got the germ theory going, which is Pasteur's
Pasteur
baby, right?
Yes, and that's really fueled his whole. He was the one who fueled more than Jenner the germ theory and the vaccinations. The vaccinations are based on the germ theory disease. In fact, all of modern medicine is based on the germ theory disease.
Well, so Ingri, I want to pursue the definition of virus a little more. I know that, for instance, the common wart or the plantar wart is said to be caused by a virus, and this is apparently communicable. If you shower without your shower shoes at a public pool, you may get a wart. And I had a dermatologist tell me once that when your body is sick of the wart, it'll get rid of it. And the virus will keep that wart on you until the relationship with your body changes. Your body gets the upper hand. And I was very curious. There's another one little bit that I've saved my whole life. I want to know, do you know what causes little warts like that, which are attributed to viruses, if viruses are in fact kind of a bogus theory?
Well, I do believe they're bogus. Every living organism, animal, mammal, fish, needs pure water or some kind of, water, oxygen, and minerals. That's the key elements of life. And they need that at the cell level and the cell is really the key to health. So if you're missing any of those things, you're going to lead to these different aberrations like warts. My mother had a huge plantar wart when I was growing up, and this was after she had us, because children, when you're pregnant, they require a lot of minerals, of course, for skeletal formation. And, she did not get enough minerals in her diet. She was a vegetarian, but didn't really know exactly what she was doing and not supplementing appropriately. So we took a lot of minerals out of her skeletal structure, and she had problems with her back ever since. Her teeth became somewhat paper thin, because the primary, is for the next generation, So if you're not getting in your diet, it's going to take it out of your skeletal structure. That happens too. If you're not getting enough minerals in your diet, that's what osteoporosis is. It'll suck it out of your skeletal structure, because the primary function is your brain and nervous system. So with that said, she healed it totally with making sunflower seed milk. She started sprouting sunflower seeds, doing lots of raw sunflower seeds. And the minerals from those raw organic sunflower seeds totally caused the plantar warts to just fall off. And she didn't do anything topically. So I'm just telling you, what the key elements in life are. So, and why all these aberrations can be healed if we get that back in balance. Dr. Truott actually wrote about that in his book, which of course is I forget his name of his book, but I just ordered a bunch of them, and I'm forgetting it, but he has a book on, basically how the human body works, and he talks about those key elements. And that's why he has a mineral company, Mother Earth Minerals, because he's been able to take these minerals that are in abundance in Utah and get them down to such a small micron size. And even though they're not biologically active, our bodies tend to assimilate them. And he has all kinds of stories of people healing all manners of disease or in their bodies just from certain mineral protocols, as well as, of course, pure water and detoxification.
Okay, so just to give listeners the tip on Truott's book, it's called Secret Assassins in Food. Is that right?
No, hold on one second. It's 2 feet from me, and I'm on a headset.
Okay, well, don't worry about it. I Googled it, and that was what I came up with. But maybe that's not his book. So,
okay,
all right.
It's Wellness Secrets for Life, an owner's manual for the human body. And it's self-published and everything, but he has some great stuff on water and minerals, and he has protocols for various ailments in the body, different types of, minerals that are indicative of different problems in our body. And I've used it quite a bit and helped people, with different, health issues just by following Truott's protocol.
So the pure water, oxygen, and minerals at the cell level, that's the real nitty-gritty of what gets us going. And the body, wants you, I always tell people, the body wants you standing up, breathing, and walking around. So it's going to attend to the functioning of the major organs at the expense of things that are lower on the hierarchy, the skeleton, the cells. And so the diversion or the robbing of minerals from the skeleton to supply the functionality of the cells of the major organs, that makes sense to me. And I don't think people realize that their body uses itself in its own hierarchic structure.
Yes.
It will be predatory upon itself just to keep things going. And I look around me at people, right, and I can see extreme levels of degeneration going on, particularly in the elderly. I mean, I see people with masses of lesions on their skin. I mean, all these horrific looking red sores and pock marks, and they're bent over, and they're barely able to move. They're not thriving. They are alive, and they're probably alive because they're just on all these pharmaceutical drugs that their doctors have prescribed for them. But right, I want to cycle back to disease and health and these viruses. So if you contend that the viral theory is bogus, I'm not going to make you get into the biochemistry of it. But what then is going on in the body when children go through their childhood diseases, which I've had, and I'm sure you had them, but are children getting them now? That's one of my questions. Have they been eliminated by some, hygiene or sanitation, or what's happening to children, given these stages that they were supposed to go through?
Actually, you're really depending on the health and vitality of the child, and many, many other factors. They could even avoid some of these stages. If you were to look at the Hopewood children, these was children that didn't even have the benefit of breastfeeding, but they were given extremely high dense nutrient dense foods and a loving environment. And this was an orphanage that was developed by some pioneers in Australia many, many years ago, and we have that on our website too. Anyway, they were not vaccinated, and they did not come down with any of these different diseases like chicken pox or even a common cold. Anyhow, I'm not sure I think it was chicken pox, or it was either chicken pox or measles. They were also going to the public school, and they would all have their brown bag lunch, and so the Hopewood children, had their brown bag lunch with really healthy stuff. And of course, these other children would have cake and, soda pop and stuff. Well, they found all of a sudden, there was an outbreak of chicken pox, and it was only among the children that were attending the school that were trading things in their lunch for the sugary snacks. And the kids that had the sugary snacks, they wanted some of the healthier foods, so they would do these trades. And I know for myself, I did the same thing. I went to school with an apple every day and whole grain bread and cheese or avocado or hummus and sprouts. I mean, we're talking, I'm dating myself, but I was born in 58, and so we're talking about this was in the 60s and early 70s. And so I was kind of, the cuckoo kid, with all this healthy food. And I remember trading my apple every day for a cake, with frosting on it.
Who did you trade
I
it
traded
to?
my apple.
Who
someone who wanted an apple, because they were hungry they never had any fresh fruit. Their parents just bought them junk. They had a bologna sandwich with Wonder Bread and a cake, So I'm just saying, so I understand that. So, I'm just saying I was craving some kind of junk, and this is the same with the Hopewood children. So they ended up, having, this little outbreak of chicken pox, and they traced it to the poor diet of, the junk that they were getting. And I don't know, we really don't understand, that these rites of passage. I've never had a poxing disease. And I've never had a vaccine against the poxing disease, but my late husband, Don Harkins, he had a full-blown case of chicken pox when he was 7, and a full-blown case of chicken pox when he was 10. I mean, both times, full-blown cases of chicken pox, 3 years apart. So we don't, there's a whole lot that we really don't know. We talk about, this, cell-mediated immune system, the TH1 function of the immune system hasn't been altered by vaccines, and that's by Philip and Cow. He kind of pioneered that term, the TH1 and TH2 functions are branches of the immune system. And, if your immune system hasn't been, altered in any way through these injections of, vaccination injections, then, we think we get this cellular immunity after we've had measles or we've had smallpox, that your body will remember that and never get it again. But is that necessarily true? Like I said, I've never had I've been around chicken pox a lot. My daughter had chicken pox. I'm her mother, I mean, I never got it. So, and then people that have, like measles, for instance, these are live virus vaccines. Now, they call them live virus vaccines. What does that mean? What is this virus? And this is the whole thing. They've never been able to isolate it. And so it's all pretty interesting, because they claim that they're non-living, but they can multiply. They have to have a living organism or host, and they multiply only in susceptible cells of a living host. And this is, the way they define these viruses, that, they're, but anyway, it's all,
well, let me tell you what I understand. I listened with great attentiveness to an interview done on the Vaccine Truth channel, Nancy Banks being interviewed by a man, you may know who he is, Vaccine Truth YouTube channel. And
yes.
Now Dr. Banks knows quite a bit about viruses, having gone into it very deeply when she was writing her AIDS, Opium, Diamonds, and Empire book, which took 6 years to complete, by the way, so that was a lot of study. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. I'm going to tell it the way I absorbed it from this interview and then from other things that I have learned in the past. So let's say you've got a person with something, measles or polio or pick a disease, and it is assumed that the disease, the virus, the causal agent of that disease is running in that person's bloodstream. So what you would do if you were a drug company or a vaccine manufacturer, you would take some tissue and blood out of this person. And in there is, presumably, the virus that's making the person sick.
Yes.
So you would then, I want to just do an aside here. When they talk about wild polio virus that's lurking in ponds and swimming pools, it is, to me, laughable because they can't catch it. How do you go to a pond and capture wild polio virus? You can't. So in the body, they use that as plan B. So if a person has a disease, then it's got to be in their body and it's got to be in their blood. So let's take some of their blood and their tissue for good measure and let's spin it. This is how they isolate the virus. They centrifuge what they've got.
Yes.
And
it's a centrifuge machine. Yeah.
Right. They separate the solid from the liquid. And they're presuming that the solid is that's the denser version of whatever it is they culled out of this poor person. So that becomes the base or basis for culturing in a petri dish. And as we talked about gangrene, it's now tissue that's out of the body, so it's becoming necrotic quickly, and it attracts bacteria from the air. They might add a bunch of stuff to it. They add more tissue, gross stuff, like, my God, you know the list, Ingri. Chicken embryos right. And give us some pig's brains, animal blood.
Right. Yeah, I have right in front of me how the Salk vaccines. This is the man who taught Salk how to make the vaccines in the 1940s, and yeah, they use these centrifuge machines. But it's pretty shocking. If you want to hear that, it's this is the thing: 10% suspensions of infected mouse lung served as a source of the virus for the first swine inoculation in each of the passage series, and after the first swine passage, similar suspensions of infected swine lung were used to inoculate swine of subsequent passages. Virus was injected into the animals. The disease produced in swine by human influenza virus was very mild. You realize this, I mean, this is, basically they're taking the nasal discharge, of, sick people and anyway, it's so disgusting. I don't know if you realize this, but Paul Offit he works at Children's Hospital. In his office, he admittedly has a centrifuge machine in his office where they deal with sick children, and that's where he gets his stuff. And he works in conjunction with these pharmaceutical industries that are making these vaccines. So he gets the material that they're making the vaccines from at Philadelphia Children's Hospital.
Right. I mentioned to a friend of mine, I was explaining this to, it's getting a vaccine. Would you rather have a spoonful of snot, I'm sorry to say, from a sick person? You could swallow it as an option, or you could have it injected into your blood. And basically, if you swallow it, you're actually better off because your gut starts breaking it down. That's part of your TH1 immune system, your cell-mediated immune system, the gut. But if you get it injected right into your bloodstream, it freaks your poor body out because it's bypassing the gut. But to go back to the making of vaccines, this culturing involving these very fetid materials like animal body parts and stem cells they'll throw in, embryos. I was hoping you would read us a creative list of this. But anyway.
It's okay, I can.
They then cause a growth of bacteria on this material, this necrotic, rotting, gross material, because bacteria love to grow on that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So then apparently they decide they have enough to work with and they have to preserve it somehow. I guess you could say arrest its rampant growth, and they use
That's right.
phenol, aluminum, mercury. These neurotoxins are used as preservatives, and then they add to that extenders, adjuvants. They've used oils in the past, oil of lecithin, squalene, peanut oil. This sort of accounts for the wild number of peanut allergies in people today. And that is like paint being thinned out with water or oil paint being thinned out with linseed oil. And that is then that collage of crud is what you get as vaccines. Those are the vaccines. They add other things to them. Like I've been told they add the HeLa cells, and one day we'll talk about that. But it is incredible. This stuff goes right into babies' bloodstreams, right into people's bodies. And there's no basis to the live virus other than this gross tissue from a sick person. That's their version of isolating and capturing and culturing virus.
Right. Well, you know, Stephen Lenka, he's a German microbiologist that has offered, what is it, 10,000 euros, and I think he's increased it. He just recently came under attack, but he's asked anyone to show him substantive proof. This is the award for substantive proof of the existence of a virus, that they've been able to isolate it. And, because all the pictures that we have of virus are just, they're not any proof at all. There's been absolutely no proof of any isolation of any virus in any of these vaccines. And this has been commented on over and over again by many researchers that are not afraid to go up against the status quo. And, rather than waste on the podcast a list of all the ingredients in the vaccine, that's all in our Vaccination 101 course on our website. We go into quite a bit of detail about the antibody theory, why a high titer count is actually a sign of a weak immune function. And we generally shy away from immune system because when we think of the skeletal system, the endocrine system, these are different systems in our body. The immune function is connected to every organ system of our body. The nervous system, it's a function that is, plays throughout our body. So any area that is weak in our body, primarily, things that happen to the nervous system and stuff could lead to an accumulation of toxins in our body. You're not getting the oxygenation that you need when you're under stress, when you're not getting enough sleep. This leads to the body accumulating and storing things that it normally would be expelling as waste. Most people find that after they've had a bout of a cold or flu, they may lose some weight. They're not hungry. If you just work on your elimination and getting stuff out of your colon, you feel a lot better. Most people are healthier after they've had a bout of sickness, as long as it's an acute stage of sickness. But what these drug companies have figured out is if we suppress the symptoms, we can keep making plenty of money, by keeping them hooked on these drugs. And the symptom suppression leads to chronic disease. And suppressing the chronic ailments, the allergies, the asthma, and continually having drugs for those will lead to the more degenerative diseases, like cancer and Parkinson's and things like that.
Yeah, I want to spell out Stefan Lanka for people to Google. Stefan Lanka. That was the German microbiologist that Ingri referred to.
That's right. Yeah.
And I also want to mention here, you said that people are actually healthier after they've had a bout of cold or flu. I believe in something that I call the lazy body theory. When you are prodded negatively, you will actually do more cleanup and get busy healing. So I've mentioned this with regard to radio frequencies and the addiction people appear to have to their wireless gadgets. They won't let them go. I mean, they walk everywhere with them. I've seen people walking on the beach holding their cell phones, a couple, husband and wife. You'd think they could leave one in the car at least. But no, people just clutch these damn things. I'm allowed to say damn on my show, and so are you.
Oh, good. Well, I'll leave off the F word. How's that?
Oh, thanks. But anyway, so people are, I think, relying, without understanding or knowing, being the least bit aware, their bodies are relying on these pulses from radio frequency using gadgets to kind of trigger or boost the healing. It's actually an injury. It's like me slapping you and getting you to do something. So, these are lazy, weak bodies, and they actually need a considerable negative stimulus in order to produce repair work that they have been neglecting because they are, you could say, beleaguered with too much stress of too many kinds, and they're in arrears. They're falling behind. The cells are falling behind. But when you stimulate the cells enough negatively, they will say, okay, I'll do something. And they start to do a little bit of work. The healthy body responds entirely differently. And I don't think we have that many healthy bodies today. But a cold kicks your body into gear. You have to start working to get rid of it. Otherwise, you're going to succumb. You're going to be, sicker and sicker. So you do something to heal. And that's when you get actually more healthy overall, as you've been saying it. I think
depending on how you treat it. I mean, I think it's important that people understand what your body is doing when it does get sick. It's trying to actually eliminate toxins. So you want to, help it along. I tell people, it's really important to make sure that your colon is working properly. That's that's your main eliminative channel is through your butt. And so, I mean, I have all these stories of, when I was in Moses Lake and I taught a class called Optimal Health Through Herbs. And, anyway, we were all young mothers, and this one woman had several children, and her one child just wasn't getting better. He just had this chronic cough. It was like a week, and she was like getting really worried. I mean, you only can fast a child on, oranges and water and stuff for so long. And I said, there's something stuck in his colon, I'm sure. And, this is a young enough kid. Kids eat all kinds of stuff, and you don't know what there is maybe stuck in there. So I said, give the kid an enema. Put him on the bathroom floor and give him an enema. And guess what came out of that kid? I mean, the kid recovered right away after, but a bunch of crayons. The kid, when he was a little, toddling baby or whatever, probably a year before, and it was just festering, and a bunch of crayons were stuck in his colon. And that's what came out, and she was fine after that. So
wow.
I'm just saying, it's really important that you take any of these sicknesses as a sign that your body needs to eliminate. And yeah, she could have given her all kinds of things to try to get her pooping, but in this case, she actually needed to have some water up her butt in order to actually get that stuff out.
That's pretty amazing. So the body couldn't process that because it's all waxy and it gets stuck in the diverticula, right?
That's right.
Diverticula are pockets. We have a colon, an intestinal tract with pockets so that food can spend some time in there and be properly digested. The nutrients can be properly removed and extracted. Whereas, for instance, carnivores have a straight colon. It's like a pipe, and they just, it goes in, it goes out. So they don't have the same nutritional needs that we do, or they don't get them the same way. Can you explain that a little bit? I'm sorry to get so
No, I think this is
very interesting.
This is actually very important. It's one of the reasons, a lot of vegetarians are, pretty strong on why humans should have more raw foods and be more vegetarian, is because our whole digestive tract is designed more like a gorilla and a chimpanzee and a monkey. And, all the carnivores do have this straight digestive tract. It's for rapid evacuation. Because when you're doing meat, this attracts a whole bunch of parasites, and the parasites that humans are harboring that eat meat, I mean, it's pretty extensive. In fact, I don't know very many people that don't harbor some kind of parasites in their system, and it really sucks any kind of nutrition out of your body, just keeping these parasites alive. And you can't be healthy with parasites. And people think, well, you just get rid of the parasites. Well, when you're not getting rid of the cause of the problem too, which is dietary. And people do need to start eating more like, people would in the alleged Garden of Eden. I mean, we do need to have fresh fruit, that's picked, sun ripened on a tree. And we're not getting that in today's society. And I know there's a big push to have, grass-fed beef and grass-fed, raw milk from, grass-fed animals. And there's a portion of the human race that has adjusted to having more animal products, mostly the Nordic people. But, the Orientals really don't process dairy products as well. Maybe their biology is adjusting to that more today. But, I think we know of the catastrophe of sending a bunch of powdered milk over to one of those countries over there, and they weren't able to process it. It got them very, very sick. So, but our bodies our whole digestive tract, when you talk about diverticuli, well, we don't really want to have pockets in our colon. That's developed more from the kind of diet that we eat. There's not any normal colons out there anymore, but there's a peristalsis action that happens, and within our bodies are designed for evacuation of our meals all within 18 hours. And most people do not do that. I mean, if you're not having a bowel movement for every meal that you eat, that should be corrected. And that's why probiotics are really good, making kimchi. There's so many things that, people are so creative and innovative, and they go back to their roots, what made them healthy. And people that have been given a lot of antibiotics. Antibiotic means like anti-life. They've killed a lot of the microbes that are naturally in their body, teeming for. Our bodies are teeming with these different kinds of microbes for different functions of our body.
Right, and they live in your gut because they do the job of breaking down. And I want to mention here the idea of leaky cells. Wireless radiation causes you to have weak cell barriers and therefore leaky cells. And when you have leaky gut cells, you will end up losing some of that microbial bacterial life into your bloodstream, where it becomes very, very dangerous and even life-threatening.
Yes.
So you want to keep the breakdown bacteria tightly in your gut. And those diverticula pockets are places where food can rest and microbes work on them. You want a fiber diet because it acts like a brush and it cleans those pockets out. And if you eat too much meat and you don't have enough roughage in your diet, you will end up causing this non-rough material to just glom and glut up in your diverticula where it becomes putrid and it's fed on by these parasites.
Right.
And you won't have the elimination that you need to have. And people are very used to it. Listen, I've met people who have one bowel movement every 2 weeks if they're lucky.
Oh, geez, Sophia, see, I find that horrifying, but you explained it very, very well. Thank you. That really is, yeah, and, I would encourage people to actually study how the body actually works. I mean, this is a very, very important thing. There's 3 things. My friend taught me the 3 most important things that people need to know, in this world and they're certainly not ever going to be taught in school. Is one, what we're talking about is how the body works in health and disease so you can maintain a state of health. I mean, our doctors are paid based on you being sick, not on health at all. We have a disease scare system, not a health care system. So it's really important that we try to move away from being dependent on any expert because we are the experts of how our thoughts are, what we eat, how we process it, all of this. I mean, we're the ones that should be responsible for that. And then, the other 2 things aren't part of the show, but it's how an economy works, how money works. We have a debt-based money system, of course. And then the other one is, who we are in relationship to the state and relationship to our creator. So, but those are I just thought I'd, throw the other 2, but it's not part of the show. But I think that's a real good summary of, things that we really need to understand if we're going to, empower ourselves as humans on the planet and make a difference.
So let's segue into the 2 different blockades of what's called the immune system: the TH1, the cell-mediated, and the TH2, or it's called humoral, I think. Right? The TH1 system, the TH2 system. Do you want to give us a little summary?
Yeah. Well, actually, Philip and Cal, this is the way he says, our immune function, he calls it system, but I say immune function. It's composed of 2 functional branches or compartments that may work together in a mutually cooperative way or in a mutually antagonistic way, depending on the health of the individual. So you just mentioned the TH2 branch, which is the humoral immune system, which is the one that produces antibodies in the blood. Circulation is a sensing or recognizing function of the immune system to the presence of foreign antigens in the body. And the other is the cellular or cell-mediated immune system, the TH1 function, which primarily destroys, digests, and expels foreign antigens out of the body through the activity of its cells found in the thymus, tonsils, adenoids, spleen, lymph nodes, and lymph system in the body. And he says, and this is the way Philip and Cal says, and a lot of people use this terminology, of TH1, these 2 different branches, and how what the vaccines do is it skews the whole body to the TH2 function.
Because it bypasses TH1. The TH1 is the barrier system also, and it includes the reflexes of coughing, sneezing, diarrhea, vomiting. The cilia in your lungs is part of TH1. The eyelashes and eyebrows are part of TH1. The even the construction of, I've been noticing things. Can I tell you a little factoid that I came up with? When we were little, we used to laugh at my mom because she had such short eyelashes. And compared to our eyelashes, because all children seem to have these beautiful, Maybelline enviable curly eyelashes, right? Mm-hmm. And then I've noticed the older I've gotten, my God, my eyelashes are disappearing. They're short, stubby little things, and I'm thinking, what is going on here? And then I figured it out. Children have round faces without a lot of sculpture, and they need long eyelashes in order to protect their eyes from foreign materials flying into them. Grown-ups, particularly the older you get, the more sunken your eye sockets become, and the actual brow of your skull acts as a shade, and your body is very, very efficient. It doesn't need to make long eyelashes when you've got this perfectly good skull and eyebrows serving, to shield. So that is the reason that people's eyelashes get shorter. And when I was little, I used to look at all these makeup ads. Remember the eyelash curlers, lengthening mascara, and I would think, why do women want all this stuff? And now I get it, because the eyelashes shorten, because the skull develops deeper pockets, and the eyes start to see.
Long eyelashes are a sign of youth.
They are a sign.
You look younger. Yes.
But they're necessary to babies and small children, because children's facial features are not protected enough. They protrude. They have those round, bulbous little faces.
Correct. And that is very interesting. I was just, we were talking a little bit about, because this is, the TH1 and TH2 is just this person's interpretation.
Yes.
And, basically, the way he describes it, what he calls TH1 would be
cell-mediated.
The natural, unadulterated immune system. So I was just going to go back to that real quickly and just say that vaccines skew it. So you have this the TH2, the antibody producing one. It puts your immune system or immune function in hyperdrive. You're constantly it overtaxes. But this is I really personally like Walene's description, because she calls it the third line of defense. She says, most of us think of the nose, mouth, and throat as the normal portals of entry for any substance. But if we extend this to include the gastrointestinal tract and the respiratory tract, as well as the skin, whose porosity makes it another portal of entry, we have what are called the primary immune organs, more commonly known as the first lines of defense, she puts in quote. If a foreign substance survives the mucosal lining and secretions of the primary immune system, the lymphatic and circulatory systems take over. These systems contain scavenger cells such as lymphocytes, leukocytes, macrophages, which devour bacteria and other elements foreign to the body, and along with serum, complement, and interferon are some of the components that create non-specific immunity. These cells and their function are sometimes called the second line of defense, or aspects of the secondary immune system. But antibodies and disease-specific immunity, which are, the titers, like that kind of thing, are the third line of defense, an aspect of the tertiary immune function. What does this tell us about the importance of antibodies? They are hardly a major player in the creation of immunity. In fact, studies and even records of epidemics reveal that those with high titer or antibody count have a high degree of susceptibility to the disease for which they were vaccinated, and those with low titer count have a high degree of immunity. And that's absolutely true. We've seen this over and over again, and that's in our article that's in our Vaccination 101 course that we put together actually in response to Dr. Sherry Tenpenny offering titer tests to, different healthcare workers that, when they were trying to avoid vaccinations, they would take a titer test as a substitute for getting vaccinated. And so if they had a certain level of titers or antibodies in their blood to a specific, disease, like Hep B or whatever, they would say that they didn't have to get it. So, but we've seen many cases where they would revaccinate people over and over again in order for that third line of defense to kick in, your body producing all these antibodies. So it's not really what you want. So the whole science has to be challenged someday, but I just encourage people to go to our Vaccination 101 course that's on our website. I also put it in my signature, but on our website, vaclib.org, short for Vaccination Liberation, we have a keyword index on the top right, and it says Vaccination 101, and there's a series of really excellent foundational articles there.
Yeah, I'd like to add what I learned about TH2. When you bypass the TH1 system and you start putting complex molecules like proteins and oils, which are in vaccines, remember these cultures, the stuff growing, the tissue, all that is protein-based, and then you have the oil extenders. And you put that material directly into the bloodstream, That's it's a later system that kicks in. The guards that act when the first order has failed. So what happens is, if the gut doesn't break down oils and proteins as it normally does, I mean, we have oil and protein that we eat all the time in our food. And that's addressed by our digestive tract and hydrochloric acid in our stomach and so forth, and it's broken down. It never enters the bloodstream unprocessed. But when you put it directly into the bloodstream, you are galvanizing the poor TH2 system. It says, oh my God, how did this stuff get in? What happened? TH1, why didn't you do your job? And it goes into this overdrive. It starts producing antibodies big time. Yes. And then it gets stuck in that mode. And you can start attacking the proteins and oils that your own body makes. Our body makes squalene. And when you go into attack mode upon yourself, that's called an autoimmune condition, and that can seriously debilitate you.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's exactly what happens. No, you explained it beautifully. That's exactly accurate.
So we need to allow our bodies to to experience materials the natural way, to put this stuff into a baby of all people, you know? Straight into the bloodstream just makes no sense at all. No wonder these babies have fits and they lie there and they're catatonic and they scream and they get all, feverish and they start collapsing. And then you do this to them 69 times over a lifetime, over their childhood.
Right. And, this is another thing. A lot of people will say, they'll criticize us. I just, want to do this correction because they don't put it directly into the bloodstream. I mean, it does actually get directly into the bloodstream, but, the instructions are to, not insert it into a vein, and it goes right into your lymphatic system, which does go into your bloodstream. But, we were criticized, early on because many of the early writers, even Richard Moskos would talk about these injections right into the bloodstream, and it was, they'd take out their instructions